Round 5. Hello and welcome to this round 5 here at Grand Prix Providence. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Kenji Igashira, and we have some real talent in our feature match area this round. We get a chance to see Frank Skarren, Seth Manfield and Chris Fennell, one of the teams that had to be picked out as being one of the more powerful teams in the field, but they're up against Chris Pikula, John Finkel and Jaime Park. 22 Pro Tour top 8s between them, admittedly a lot of them from John Finkel, and it's John Finkel who we're going to be starting with up against Seth Manfield. Former world champions both. It'll be a matter of which one's able to put together the best start, and I believe both these players on Merfolk. Merfolk proving very popular in today's field.
Yeah, blue-green, Shapers of Nature. We've seen that card many times. It actually took over quite a few of the games in the last round.
And Deep Root Warrior gets stuck in though. A 2-2 naturally, but turns into a 3-3 when blocked, so that enough to get through those Shapers of Nature just fine. But no follow-up from Seth here, potentially representing a threat, trick of some description. But in the meantime, he's going to have to contend with whatever it is that John does on his turn.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier. The Merfolk player who goes first, generally favored, but if Seth just doesn't have anything for his third turn, then it's going to be John who pulls away ahead in this game.
Gets in for 3 there. So even just on the regular damage stakes, John a little bit ahead, and he's got 4 mana up, so that even though he's passed the turn, he could put a +1/+1 counter on those Shapers of Nature at some point.
Yeah, this is a nice use of his mana. He can hold up, say, Run Aground if he wants to use that, or should Seth do nothing that he wants to interact with, he can just add that counter like you mentioned.
So there comes Jade Guardian, does not get stopped by any kind of counter magic. Not once it's in play, potentially a little problematic. It has got hexproof and is now a 3-3. Shapers of Nature, though, a little ahead in terms of development, growing to be a 4-4 there, end of turn.
Yeah, slightly awkward for John. He was holding up that Run Aground. He does get to still use his mana to put a 1/1 counter on the Shapers, but now he's falling behind as far as board presence is concerned.
Chooses not to attack there, holds all his mana up again. Run Aground there, lets you put a creature on top of its owner's library. That means that they're then drawing it again the following turn rather than a fresh card. Unfortunately, hexproof rather getting in the way of that plan for John last turn.
Seth has to weigh his options here. John, I think, might even have a dive down in his hand as well, so even if Seth does go for something tricky, John can kind of blow that out.
Land drop's not proving to be a problem for Seth here, hitting every land. John, he's just got the 1 source of blue mana, which may curtail his ability to get things going here, but we'll find out soon enough. Once you hit 5 mana in this blue-green deck, a couple of key flash creatures that potentially could spring out and cause problems. And I know that back the last time that Merfolk was really a deck that one could draft a lot of, i.e. in Lorwyn, it was John Finkel's favourite draft archetype. So not necessarily too surprised to see him going back to the Merfolk this time round, though obviously this time round a little bit more you can do with the green mana.
Yeah, Seth signaling that he has some sort of trick here, attacking the 3-3 Jade Guardian into the 4-4 Shapers, and John just opting to take it here.
Yeah, kind of a cagey game being played by each of these players here as they sort of gradually try and feel out what the other is up to. Chart a course there from Seth Manfield, drawing him a couple of cards. And Shapers of Nature getting ever larger. Unfortunately, in this sort of a matchup, there are a number of combat tricks that mean that it's difficult to know for sure when your creature is going to be big enough to survive a combat. At the moment, Deep Root Warrior looks enough smaller that it could be safe, but a lot of variables in these sorts of matchups.
Yeah, John really would like to hit another land here, so he's able to hold up not only dive down, but pump from his Shapers of Nature. Ooh, and a gross play here from Seth.
Yeah, one with the wind on a Jade Guardian. It's got hexproof, so there's nothing that can be done about that by John Finkel. A second Jade Guardian, which might want to pump the first here, so that you have a relatively safe all-in creature. It's a 4/4, it's a 6/6 flyer, so build your own dragon here.
That's going to be very, very hard for John to deal with. He's going to need either to chump it or somehow outrace it, but currently on this board, he's just not capable of doing that.
I mean, I think that the best play available to John, if he had it, would be a Crushing Canopy to deal with the enchantment, then a block. But barring that, there's not too much that can be done about this gigantic Jade Guardian in the air.
Yeah, that would be a huge blowout for John if he did have that crushing, but well, he's been holding up that runaground. He's finally going to pull the trigger on the only creature he can from on Seth's board.
Yeah, on 7 life, and he's going to have to find something big here if he's going to get his way out of lethal attacks very soon indeed. That 8 next to Seth Manfield's name indicating that he's currently ranked 8th in the world of Magic players, but if you ask many players who their number 1 of all time is, well, it would be that guy sat opposite him.
And John realizes he has to get aggressive here. He can't just sit back. There's no way he can race a 6/6 hexproof flyer.
Yeah, this is a plan that a lot of players have talked about being interesting for draft, because both One with the Wind and Jade Guardian commons, so it is reasonable to expect to be able to assemble this with some regularity. Seth Manfield here not having to do anything too smart, just getting his hits in. Yes, there's a flash creature from John Finkel which can block the smaller of the 2 Jade Guardians, but as it turns out, Crash the Rampart enough to mean that Seth Manfield picking up a relatively straightforward game 1.
Yeah, just all in on his hexproof creature, and there's nothing John can do.
So the joy of Team Magic, of course, is that once one match is finished, we've got plenty more Magic to look at. We're going to get a chance to see one of our other matches here. It looks like we've got Jaime Park on the right of our screen against Chris Fennell. So it's red-white dinosaurs on the right of our screen up against red-green, I presume dinosaurs for Chris Fennell as well. And on the face of things here, it looks like Jaime Park's got a nice collection of dinosaurs. Territorial Hammer Skull is what quietly proving to be just one of the really important threats in the format, able to tap down a blocker, and that meaning that Chris Fennell here getting stuck in with a creature that with reach would normally be looking to block the flyer on the other side of the table.
Yeah, Chris either wanting to activate Raid here or obviously threatening some kind of trick with that. And we saw Chris in a previous round. He got run over by the 3-color Dino deck. Geshath in one of them. Yeah,
that the one loss that Skarren-Manfield and Fennell have picked up thus far. They're 3-1 though, so still in pretty reasonable shape. And the red-white dinosaurs getting stuck in for Jaime Park here as he tries to avenge John Finkel's Game 1 loss. Chris Pakula has already picked up his Game 1 against Frank Skarren, so actually everything all tied up between these players right now. So Park looking to build his board just a little further. And obviously, while he would love to have a dinosaur itself, having a Tilanali's Knight is a pretty reasonable pickup also. It will get +1/+1 when he attacks with it, so a 2/2 at present that will turn into a 3/3 when he attacks, as long as he still has at least one of those dinos on the battlefield.
Yeah, just a premium 2-drop in the dinosaur deck. Awkward as if you're behind, it's not really doing too much except being a bear, of course, but Jaime is the one in the driver's seat currently, so this is good for him. And it looks like he's holding on to Ixalan's Binding as well.
Now, if we're talking about the various archetypes of dinosaurs, because they're in 3 colors, how do we feel about red-white versus red-green? I guess that the green deck has a little more beef, whereas the white deck has a little bit more evasion and removal?
Absolutely, yeah. You get things like Sky Terror, 2/2 Flying Menace in red-white. You get Pterodon Knights, 3/3 Flyer if you have a dinosaur, whereas the green is just going to be playing the Colossal Dreadmarl, 6/6 Tramplers, etc., etc.
Obviously, when we're talking about sealed, it's all down to what you open, but once it comes to draft, there's room to have a little bit of a preference and lean toward that. Jaime Park with Pro Tour top 8 in 3 different decades. He's been at it for a while. Picked up his first top 8 when he was one of the younger players on the tour. And of course, Fink and Pakula also go right back to the original Pro Tours when things very first kicked off. So the archer that Chris Fennell has in play there has not really been able to do too much at all. Got stuck in for 1 point because it knew it wasn't blocking. And Chris here on the back foot once more.
Yeah, once again we see the power of the Territorial Hammer Skull. Just such a premium 3-drop, especially at common in this format. And Chris, it looks like he's drawing a bit of lands, but Jaime's just continuously playing thread after thread. It looks like he's holding on to either 3 or 4 spells in hand currently.
Yeah, Jaime in a nice spot here where if he didn't commit anything more to the board, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but he does have plenty of cards in hand such that he potentially could. We can see him leaning across there. That might be him just providing a second opinion to John, or indeed asking for one. If you're looking for someone to be sat next to get advice from in a game of Magic the Gathering, hard to think of too many people better than John Finkel. Another copy of that Tillanalli's Knight.
And yeah, Jaime was already threatening lethal the following turn. Now he has an extra creature to really bolster that next attack.
Yeah, Chris, it would have to be a pretty spectacular draw here to get him out of all the trouble he finds himself in here.
Quite a few times now, a Star of Extinction would have been premium in...
Star of Extinction, commentator's friend,
right.
The card that means that you're never completely out of it, or very rarely completely out of it, what should I say. Raptor Hatchling coming down. A fine blocker, but possibly not quite good enough here. A lot of different angles of attack here for Jaime Park at this point with the number of creatures he has on the battlefield.
Yeah, Jaime still has lethal on the board, and given that Chris hasn't done anything the last few turns, I assume Jaime's is just going to go for it here. Looks like he might use his Ixalan's Binding first, though.
Yeah, I guess that it's a question mark. Do you want to make sure of your win in the game, or potentially hide one extra piece of removal that your opponent might play around? And especially when you've got two other players on your team that you want to make sure you do the right thing for, it becomes a little bit easier to just go for the throat, I guess. 2 copies of Ixalan's Binding for Jaime Park. So I guess when you've already shown one, it's not that big a deal showing more. So Jaime Park and Chris Pakula picking up their game ones, Seth Manfield picking up his. So a slight edge to the old-timers on the right of our screen at present. Looks like there's some synchronized shuffling going on. Chris Pakula just drawing his opening hand, so we may get a chance to see some of his games soon enough against Frank Skarren up at the far end of our tables there. You can see that on the other side of things, we have got another match going on. Once we finish our live match, we will get to that in Time Walk Magic. But here we have Frank Skarren and Chris Pikula, and it's red-white on the left of our screen. Previously, we saw it on the right of our screen mere moments ago against Chris Pikula, who is red-blue. Yeah,
red-blue usually Pirates. We'll have to see what Chris is opted to go for this team build. We saw Frank in a previous round. He was pretty aggressive. He had quite a few dinosaur synergies in his deck as well. We saw, I believe, a Danto Vanguard, Thrash of Raptors. If you remember, though, it was...
Oh, absolutely,
versus the black-white vampires in the previous round. It was haymakers after haymakers. Oh, this is a great start here for Frank.
Yeah, if you had to pick a powerful 3-drop in white, this one certainly qualifies.
Well.
Mavrin Fane, Dusk Apostle, the 2/2 that whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, you get to create a 1/1 vampire creature token with lifelink. So essentially, he's getting an impact from that 3-drop immediately because he already had a vampire in play. He could attack and generate a token.
Oh, this is just great for Frank. He loves seeing this from Chris's side. And 05 cannot block any of Frank creatures and threaten to kill them. So Frank just gets to attack in with all of his critters, gain 3 life, get 2 more 1/1 life linking vampires. This is just a great curve out.
Yeah, when we talk about the vampiric go wide strategy, this is exactly it writ large. Mavrin Fane just meaning that everything that Frank Skarren doing just off to the races. And little Raptor companion there, the sidekick as it were. Probably the most likely creature to get blocked because it does have the most power on the battlefield right now. But you know what? The big issue that Chris Pikula faces is that there's simply a lot of creatures on the other side of the battlefield will be able to attack round that crew.
We do see Chris picked up the first game, though, so...
Oh, he's definitely got some power in his deck. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be able to deploy it in time to deal with what has to be called a pretty lightning-fast start from Frank Skarren here. A lot of flyers in Chris Pikula's deck, so even if it works out that the ground is very much controlled by Frank, it doesn't necessarily put Chris Pikula out of it. 4 mana tapped here, though, and...
This could be Vance's Blasting Station?
So this is a really interesting one, and it might signal why we haven't seen too many plays from Chris in the early stages of the game. The Blasting Station, it comes down and it looks relatively harmless, and to be fair, it is relatively harmless initially. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you can cast it this turn. Where things get scary, though, is when it transforms. If you cast 3 spells in a turn, you get to transform it, at which point Vance's Blasting Cannons becomes... well, one of the more powerful lands that you're likely to see. Spitfire Bastion there, you can pay 2 and red to deal 3 damage to a creature or player. Just start throwing out lightning bolts from that tower again and again and again. And that is the sort of thing that, given time, will dominate a board.
Right, but this is just not a great position for it. I think Chris knows that he has to dig to an answer, and which is why he played it, because it just doesn't do anything on this board right now. Frank is still able to attack, and look at the life totals.
Yeah, 28-9. The lifelink has been working for Frank Skarren, but to be honest, that's not the important bit so much as simply the fact that he's been able to get so many threats on the battlefield, and that's enough for Chris Pakula to pick him up. He's ready to go to a game 3, and we're going to get a chance to see even more magic from this. These games are just falling super
Lightning
fast here. Yeah, I mean, this is the format though. As much as there are lots of cool build around enchantments and so on, there's also just draws like this one. Again, we see Jade Guardian. Again, we see one with the wind, and that enough to mean that Seth Manfield picking up a 2-0 victory over John Finkel. Dear Diary, we did it.
Yeah, that looks like a repeat of the previous game. Crash the Ramparts was also there to follow up and finish off John. So Seth takes a quick 2-0.
And he gets a chance to help out one of his buddies here. Slides across to see how Frank is looking to sideboard for his game 3 against Chris Pakula. Jaime Park just sat there casually playing a little game of Magic against Chris Fennell. If he picks up the win, though, all of a sudden we're going to have a decider between Chris Fennell and Frank Skarren.
Chris Pakula, yeah. Man, that was lightning fast.
Yep. I mean, when you get that draw, though, it's very, very difficult to interact with.
Right.
A hexproof monster that's then given flying and a big power and toughness boost. It's enough to end games very, very easily. It's the sort of thing that we've been looking through the various first pick questions that have been going on between games and saying, is it really right to pick a Jade Guardian first? It doesn't feel like it should be correct. But sometimes you just get to kill people stone dead in a way that is not really achievable by very many other cards in this format.
Looks like Chris and Jaime are in their game.
Yep, we're going to jump down there and see if we can get a little bit of a look in on whether or not Chris Fennell is going to be able to win on camera for us. He's had a bit of a rough run of it early doors. Lightning rig crew there already in play, so they're going to get to plink through for some damage, but unfortunately, again, we see one of these scenarios where they don't prove as good a blocker as they really ought to, because in this case, it's a territorial hammer skull that just can tap them down and mean that some big swings could come here. The only thing that Chris Fennell's got going for him is that he's got 2 blockers rather than just 1 here, meaning that he can force Jaime to do a little bit of different taps.
Yeah, Jaime with a premium start. Turn 2 Tillinelli's Knight, turn 3 Territorial Hammer Skull. I see a Pious Interdiction in his hand. I think he might even have a Pterodon Knight to follow it up here. So just a great curve for the red-white Dino deck.
Yeah, Territorial Hammer Skull, another copy of it. You want to be picking these guys early and often because they will not come round late. 2-3 for 3 is not an exciting rate when you start looking at it, but you know what? When your opponent can never block, 2 a turn will do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Clears a path for your bigger dinosaurs very nicely.
And this is just disgusting, because if Chris just plays 1 creature here, Jaime can follow it up with Pious Interdiction, attack in with all 3 of his creatures, and get in for the full damage.
So here's a pounce such that Territorial Hammer Skull number 2 gets taken down by that Whiptail. Life total's still pretty high here. It's still early doors in the game in spite of Jaime Park's aggressive start.
Yeah, that's a huge boon for Chris. He needed that removal spell there, otherwise he was just going to fall quickly to the double tapper.
And the couple of fight cards available to the red-green dinosaurs deck obviously playing very nicely with Enrage. Didn't have any range going this time, but when you do get to get that little bit of extra value from what is essentially a removal spell, things can get out of hand pretty fast, and I fully expect to see some amount of fighting dinos in Standard.
I hope we do at the very least.
Well, in our World Championship next weekend in Boston, do tune in for that. We'll get a chance to see whether or not any of that's coming along. Rummaging Goblin joining the team for Chris Fennell. Rummage, of course, the act of discarding and then drawing a card. The little Goblin Pirate that could.
Especially in a format following up all of the cycling that we had in Hour of Devastation and Omniken, I think the Rummaging Goblin just goes way, way up in value.
We all know how it goes now. Basically, he's saying, tap that card in your hand that you didn't want anyway. Right. It's now got cycling.
Exactly.
For those of you lamenting its loss, I know Brian David Marshall was tweeting this week about how sad he is about not having the opportunity to cycle anymore. Explore feels like it's on that spectrum, even if it's a little bit lower down the mix. And there is that Pterodon Knight.
Yeah, Jaime just continuing to put good pressure. Chris has done a good job of stabilizing, though, not really taking too much damage. 2 a turn isn't that bad, especially when he's keeping quite well up with the Lightning Rig crew. You know, we've seen Chris's deck multiple times now, and we just really haven't seen much power yet from it. I'm wondering what kind of cards he's hiding in his deck to warrant the red-green dinos.
And I guess that one good thing about drafting red-green dinos is once you get to or indeed building it in sealed, once you get to the sort of mid-game and beyond, we see just big creatures getting thrown down, and if on balance your creatures are just bigger than your opponents, then your average draw, you're going to be able to get in some pretty nice little fights there. Spiketail Ceratops coming down, the 4/4 that can block an extra creature. So gradually Chris Fennell just building up this board that is large enough that Jaime is struggling to get too much into the red zone. Going to have to lean on that Pterodon Knight, at least for now, if he wants to get any real damage through.
No, Grazing Whiptail is just one of the premium 4-drop commons, though. I mean, 3/4 reach just blocks so many things in this format, including that Pterodon Knight. Now it's on Jaime to have something, but we know he has the Pious Interdiction.
Pious Interdiction, Pacifism plus, +2 life in this case, takes the Whiptail out of the game, and that meaning that Pterodon Knight and indeed the other creatures getting to get stuck in here.
And that's 5 more damage for Jaime Park getting in.
I think the thing that I like about the white dinosaurs in the overall dinosaur mix is just the place that they sit on the mana curve. You get to do really relevant things on turns 3 and 4. With both the red and the green dinos, to be honest, the excitement really comes a little bit higher up the curve, and as we've seen in this format, sometimes higher up the curve can be a bit trickier to actually get to.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting into the later stage of this game, and Chris has been discarding land to that Rummaging Goblin, or at least the previous turn he was, but you know, he's just fallen behind to the more evasive creatures.
Yeah, Chris carefully considering his options, because every one of the cards in his hand has a sort of asterisk by it saying, this could be the top card of your deck.
Could be anything. Could be a boat even.
I love it. This is a format with them.
Exactly. Though I think Sleek Schooner is the worst of the boats. 4/3 that Crew 1 seems very good, but we were quite fortunate with cards like Renegade Freighter, so...
Yes. But, you know, there are some galleons that are worth it. What would a pirate be without a boat? Or indeed a dinosaur in this case.
Yeah, so Chris still needs another big creature or removal spell here to really stabilize. Because as such, you know, Jaime still just has that 3/3 flyer now that Grazing Whiptail is, well, been interdicted.
Frank Skarren and Chris Pakula, their match underway, and of course, if Frank's able to pick that one up, then that renders this entire game moot. But in the meantime, Chris Fennell looking to do his bit where he can, loots away a creature, trying to find something bigger and better at this point.
Yeah, Otepec Huntmaster, great in the early stages, still fine in the mid stages too, as you can give a dinosaur haste. But since he's so far behind and the one being attacked, you know, he has to be more defensive.
3 mana left over, looking for something.
I mean, all really Chris needs is just one removal spell for that Territorial Hammer Skull, and he's back in great position.
Not quite the removal spell that he was looking for. Unfortunately, his archer's not able to take down the Pterodon Knight, though they will mean that he's got another thing that sort of enters the fray as what needs to be tapped down. He's got a lot of toughness on this battlefield, even if he's not got a whole amount of power going on.
Yeah, and you know what? That's not bad. That Thematic Compass is going to do that its best Maze of Ith representation in a few turns here. It also gives him lands to discard to Rummaging Goblin. He can pay 3, find a basic from his library, and then rummage it away.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He's kind of got two options for it. He can either use it as fuel for the Goblin, or he can work towards getting 7 lands in play in order to transform that Thaumatic Compass into Spires of Orazca, at which point it gets to untap attacking creatures and remove them from combat. Great against the dinosaurs on the other side of things. Of course, Orazca, the city of gold that everyone is looking for in Ixalan. It wouldn't surprise me at all if when we got on to our next set in the block, we got to find out a little bit more about what mysteries Orazca might hold.
I certainly hope so. Well, this is Jaime's turn to do something if he has any kind of trick or another removal spell. Chris is tapped out.
Yeah, not quite shields down, because there's certainly a lot of creatures that are very much trying to shield Chris Fennell's life total. But at least Jaime Park knows that he only needs to worry about what's on the battlefield, at least for right now.
Yeah, and Jaime still has a good attack here. He can attack with everything tapped down the spike-tailed Ceratops. Chris doesn't have any great blocks. I mean, he can bounce his creatures in front of others, but that doesn't take care of the problem.
He's definitely going to be taking some damage here. Chooses to take the minimum, that being 2 from that Hammer Skull. Single-digit life put total now for Chris Fennell as he takes that attack. And what's the follow-up that we're going to see here from Jaime Park? Looks like he's got something going on.
It's a nice one. Emissary of Sunrise.
Finds a land, not exactly what you want, so it's just a 2/1 first striker rather than a 3/2. But the first strike on it means that if you cast it on turn 3 and actually hit on the Explore, it's just a gigantic monster that's very, very frustrating to try and deal with. And at least he's drawing that land now rather than drawing it for his turn and having it potentially feel kind of like a blank.
Definitely above the curve as far as white 3-drops are concerned.
Yeah, Explore, one of those abilities that I think that when I first saw it, I undervalued a little bit. Now I'm very happy to have a ton of Explorers in my deck.
I think that was the case for most people too. I certainly did.
Who knew that in a set where the entire theme was every single tribe trying to find something, the mechanic that's about trying to find something proved to be pretty good. All right, Chris, what do we got for us? He's going to search up a land.
Yeah, I think at this point he's going to want to try to transform that Thematic Compass. Oh, even find a splash color. We did see, Tishana, I believe?
Tishana, Voice of Thunder, is a card that is definitely in Chris's pool. We don't know for sure whether or not he brought it in or if it was just in the main as a cheeky little splash. On this battlefield, it would do a lot. Just casually drop into play, draw 5 cards, and then be a giant threat just in and of itself. It's strange because as the various tribal mythics go, this one feels a little out of place because actually the Merfolk deck often isn't really trying to get up to 7 mana.
No, not at all. It's so weird too. Like, generally you're going to be getting rid of most of your hand before you cast Tishana, and if you notice, Tishana is not a cast trigger either. So if you play Tishana and she's the last card in your hand, she actually dies before you get to draw the cards.
So a pounce here enabling the removal of the key piece of the puzzle that Jaime Park had going on. That Hammer Skull is going to get taken down here in a straight-up fight. Jaime Park with 3 mana untapped. Has he got a response that's going to be relevant here?
Something like Lightning Strike or Sure Strike would make it a 2-for-2.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the Ceratops that's getting involved in this fight, and as a 4/4, it's unlikely that Jaime Park has an instant speed way of just removing the creature entirely, which would obviously be something that he would love to be able to do here. Instead, he just has to let his little dino get pounced on.
It's the food chain. 4/4s eat 2/3s. I think that Spiketail had enough tappity-tippity from that Hammer Skull.
The match between Frank Skarren and Chris Pakula also going on at the moment. If Frank's able to win that one, then this is all moot, but we will find out and bring you updates from that as and when it's going on.
Yeah, I think I like Jaime's decision not to Sure Strike here. I think he'd rather preserve that for, say, his Pterodon Knight to be able to keep bashing in the air. Now, notably, he did lose his only other dinosaur, but we're going to assume he has quite a few others in his deck.
Yeah, the one dinosaur that was in play there, doing a lot between the Tilnali's Knight and Pterodon Knight. Just the one white source here for Jaime Park. It's possible that might be causing his hand to be a little bit messy here.
Yeah, and at this point, I think Chris has done a good job stabilizing. He might even be able to start attacking in with that spike-tailed, should that thematic compass transform next turn. And of course, he can just tutor up a land should he want to do that.
Yeah, the compass definitely has the potential to transform. I think this game's going kind of slowly. I think I want to just quickly jump across and see how things are going with Frank Skarren and Chris Pikula, just so that we can make sure that if that match is going very much in Frank's way, that we don't miss the ending of what's going on here. Looks like there's quite a lot of action coming from Frank here. Big attacks, and, well, we talked about it being important in the last game. There's, again, one of those hammer skulls in play until Tilnali's Knight. It's, wow, two copies of the hammer skull. The hammer might be coming down on Chris Pakula here, and we may have jumped across right on time, Kenji Igashira.
Yeah, Frank in commanding position, double hammer skull. We see a Tilnali's Knight. This is like the reverse of what Jaime Park was doing.
Yep, turns out our card viewer and Territorial Hammer Skull all ready to go. Yeah. Super important in this limited format here with Ixalan. Ixalan, of course, coming out just yesterday, and these players already showing that they know what they want to be doing in this format.
I think it's definitely hammer time here because one of Chris's creatures can't block. The two Territorial Hammer Skulls attack. They tap down, the rig and the pirate, and they say, can't touch this.
Well, Frank Skarren, he's got enough creatures on the battlefield. He's representing lethal here. The extra pirate, meaning that Chris Pakula can cast tap it to deal damage and then untap it with the Shipwreck Looter. Chris Pakula walking a very fine line here in order to stay in this game.
So let's see. If Frank just attacks with everything, taps down the two non-rig creatures, Chris blocks one of the 3-power, either Tilnali's Knights or a Raptor Companion. Chris is still taking 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So lethal on board. Of course, Chris does have that treasure at the top of your screen there with one mountain open, so it's not like he's completely out of it. He does have some potential cards.
Yeah, I would love to see a Siren's Ruse to flicker a tapped pirate, get an extra block in, draw a card, and maybe get something going.
The only problem with that is that the Territorial Hammer Skulls are 2/3, so any of the creatures that Chris would flicker just don't do anything versus the 2/3s. He would have to trade it for the 3/1, which is fine. He would survive, obviously, but it's just not the place he wants to be.
I think that if there was a lightning strike, we might have already seen it. This is dangerous territory for Chris Pakula here. And Chris Fennell may have found a way to escape this round in spite of not being able to put up the numbers.
You can see Seth weighing in with Frank there, getting some secondary input. How much damage does Chris have on the backswing? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, I mean, Chris, if he survives this turn, does have lethal on the board. He would be able to ping in with the Lightning Rig crew that would... Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at Chris's life. Never mind. Frank's at a pretty healthy life total still of 12.
I mean, the red decks do have reach, so it's definitely worth worrying about.
Is that a Planeswalker without Watley? No.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get that card just moved down a touch just so we can figure out what it was. Unfortunately, that right-hand edge, not quite enough that we can figure out what it was that Frank played just here. It may be that it proves ultimately irrelevant. Frank here choosing to tap down the Lightning Rig crew amongst other things. And that enough for the handshake. Frank Skarren, Seth Manfield, Chris Fennell picking up the W here in round 5 against Chris Pakula and John Finkel. Congratulations to them. And Finkel, he was watching on from the side there as Chris couldn't quite get everything that he needed to get things going. They dropped to 3 and 2, but congratulations to Frank, Seth, and Chris. They are now still on just a single loss. Nice position to be in. We will have more Magic for you soon enough. We have, of course, got our Time Walked matchup from this round, and we will be bringing that to you right after these messages. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here in Grand Prix Providence. Things are rocking and rolling rather nicely. Our main match from round 5 already completed, but you know what? We recorded another one for you. Our time walk match just about ready to kick things off. I'm Tim Willoughby. This guy's Kenji Igashira. Let's head back down to our feature match area so we can see a little bit of time walked magic. So here we have Andrew Funkhouser, Deanna Dang and Will Craddock against Don Smith, Oliver Tu and Noah Walker. Kicking things off with Funkhouser against Smith here. And on the right-hand side of things, it looks like Donald Smith on red-white, the dinosaur colours that we've seen in the feature match area quite a bit. And for Funkhouser, it's blue-green and, by the looks of things, specifically blue-green merfolk.
Now, this is great for Donald. The fact that Andrew didn't have anything on the first 3 turns in a blue-green deck, even first 4 turns now.
What is going on? How is this a keep?
Yeah, he's been able to develop out Captain Lannery's Storm, which is going to do a ton of damage. Plus, it ramps Donald.
Yeah, Lannery's Storm, one of those cards that normally I'm happy enough if all it does is ramps my mana a little bit, but here we're seeing it doing so much more, meaning that there's going to be a Bishop of Rebirth on table a turn early, in foil no less. So that means that if Lannery's Storm gets killed off, well, you know, the Bishop can just get her right on back.
Yeah, and so Donald making a pretty smart play here with only 4 mana open. He doesn't have to worry about like a Windstrider ambushing anything here. So he plays the Bishop pre-combat. By sacrificing a treasure, it pumps up Captain Lannery's Storm, and he gets in for 3 damage instead of just 2.
I like it. And the fact that the Bishop of Rebirth going back on top here, not really the end of the world. Obviously, it'd be nice to keep it in play, but this way round, you know, Donald Smith, he's still just got consistent sources of damage coming through, and if that's the best that Funkhouser can do in the early to mid-game here, and we are at the mid-game and he's played exactly 1 spell, then that might well just not be good enough.
Now, this is definitely more conspicuous.
Yeah, 5 mana, there are many, many more things that a blue-green deck can threaten to throw down here.
We'll see if it is, in fact, a Windstrider. I mean, Donald would be able to just straight-up trade for it because he can sack a treasure to make Captain Lannery's Storm a 3/2.
But a Snapping Sailback, which also costs 5 and also is a flash creature within range of the blue-green deck, potentially more of a problem. We'll see whether or not Donald Smith is bothered by that.
Yeah, I mean, with 2 treasures, you can still trade with that even.
And no real big surprises here as to what's coming down. There it is again. There is the Windstrider, Bishop of Rebirth on the other side of things. And the Windstrider, it might as well be attacking here because it's not really got great blocks.
Yeah, Andrew knows that the Bishop of Rebirth was following the play, and he doesn't want to trade off for Captain Lannery Storm and just have it, get returned by the Bishop on the following. Oh, nice here from Andrew, though. Savage Stomp going to take care of that Bishop of Rebirth. Also pumps up the Windstrider.
Yeah, having to pay the full 3 for it because Windstrider, notably not a dinosaur. But you know what? It's now a 4/4 flyer, and that's a pretty sizable threat. I mean, I guess that Donald Smith had to suspect that there was something pretty potent in Funkhouser's hand because clearly, based on what he'd seen thus far, nothing too exciting going on. But an Explore there, revealing a nice one in Shapers of Nature. That one seems unlikely to get put into the graveyard.
Just a classic that we've seen in almost every single one of these blue-green Merfolk decks.
As if you needed enough of a signpost that you wanted to build a blue-green Merfolk deck. Sometimes there's just a really powerful blue-green uncommon.
Fortunately for Donald, he still has a grip full of creatures. Bonded Horncrest. I saw a Territorial Hammer Skull. Like, he can play out multiple threats this turn, and he is putting the pressure on Andrew.
Yeah, Captain Lannery Storm quietly doing good work here. It's not necessarily a card that is at the very top end of the power curve, but you know what? If you open it, you're certainly going to play it if you're in red. Funkhouser offering the trade here, and that enough for the Sure Strike from Donald Smith. +3 power and first strike.
We might actually see him just sack all of the treasures here as well to follow up with that Territorial Hammer Skull in addition to this Bonded Horncrest.
I kind of like it. It's obviously a shame to be doing it that way around and not have mana up, but you know what? This way his board an awful lot wider, and it means that if that flyer on the other side of the battlefield wants to try and race, it's going to be just a little bit harder to achieve.
Yeah, I like this play a lot because if Donald didn't play out the Territorial Hammer Skull, Andrew would just need a way to deal with the captain, whether it be a bounce or a removal spell, and then that Horncrest wouldn't be attacking next turn. But now there are 2 creatures in addition to the Bonded, so...
Well, it turns out Saturday night's all right for fighting. Andrew Funkhouser, he's only had 1 creature in play the entire game, but it's successfully fought against 2 different threats and 1 on each occasion. That Deep-Root Warrior coming down there. 2/2 that if it gets blocked, it turns into a 3/3. Donald Smith unafraid because he has another Sure Strike, gets to take down another creature on Andrew Funkhouser's side of the battlefield while still swinging in. The life totals, though, pretty close here. Definitely still room for Funkhouser to turn this around if he can just start to string something together here. We know that he's got those Shapers of Nature in hand, and he's got enough mana if he's got a land in hand to play them and immediately give them a +1/+1 counter.
All right, we also might see him play the Shapers and make that Windstrider 5/5 so that it can trade with that Bonded Horncrest. I think the Horncrest is the true issue here, especially when Andrew only has that land in Shapers as the last 2 cards in his hand.
Yeah, Donald Smith at a point now where he's had so many attacks with Captain Lannery Storm that he's kind of out of gas a little bit because he's had the mana to play all of his spells. Shapers of Nature, just an absolutely monstrous threat. The fact that it can either make your team bigger and better or in a pinch draw you cards just means that it works every angle. The only thing that you need is time.
Oh boy, Charging Monstrosaur, the draw for Donald this turn though, who, if he didn't draw a spell this turn, was actually looking in kind of bad shape as Andrew would still have that Shapers of Nature to start drawing extra cards from his library. But, I mean, this is huge.
I mean, monstrous by name, monstrous by nature. Charging Monstrosaur, the mythic uncommon that everyone wants in their limited deck.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're talking Team Sealed, it's going to be the player that is just naturally playing red anyway, but very, very splashable. Just a single red in the casting cost. Haste, trample, doing it all.
So this is great, though, for Andrew, as he gets to trade off the Shaper's Nature for Captain Lannery Storm, and the Windstrider, after he pumps, is going to trade for the Charging Monstrosaur. Donald still needs to draw something in order to be able to attack the following turn. Andrew does fall down to 3, but any spell here from Andrew is great.
What's it going to be? Just a draw and a pass. What's Donald got going?
Anything's good. It looks like a Fathom Fleet firebrand.
Alliteration all the way. And, of course, so much mana that either one of those creatures would have been plenty good enough. Andrew Funkhouser picks up his cards and picks up the first loss, though Will Craddock has got a win on that side of the table. So it's still very much in the balance here in round 5 for these two teams. Oliver 2 and Deanna Dang on the central table, the only ones still in their game 1.
Oh, looks like Deanna Dang just picked up the first game, though.
These games falling thick and fast. Synchronized Magic, that's how we like it.
Yeah, that was a crazy good draw for Donald, as if he didn't draw that Charging Monster, again, Andrew would have just been in pretty good shape.
Now, one thing worth noting, we've not had a chance to talk about it too much because of the nature of how these games go, is the way that sideboarding works in Team Sealed specifically. Normally, when you're building a sealed deck, the potential for sideboarding kind of small, but you have that much bigger a pool that every card gets registered to someone, and that means that you get to potentially really have some specific relevant sideboard cards in addition to what's ever in your main 40-card deck.
Yeah, that's a great point. Whereas in solo sealed, you get what you open. In team sealed, you have access to so many more cards, and generally people are playing different colors, maybe a little bit of crossover, but you're going to have access to so much more powerful sideboard effects. We've been talking about like cards as Crushing Canopy, for instance. Great start for both players. Wow. Yeah.
Donald Smith on Team Unblockable Dinos, between Sky Terror and the now ubiquitous Territorial Hammer Skull. We are in a position where Funkhouser doesn't really have much in the way of blockers, but Shapers of Nature definitely, as we've seen, has the potential to go large if there's time. And basically what Donald Smith's deck's entirely trying to achieve is for there not to be any time for these bigger threats to get things going.
Wow, nice curve here from Donald. Turn 2 Sky Terror, turn 3 Territorial Hammer Skull, turn 4 Bonded Horncrest. That is just the dream red-white dino curve.
Well, I mean, the dream actually, turn 5 is where it's all at, right?
Okay, all right.
He has a Monstrosaur in his deck, that's all I'm saying. If he makes the turn 5 as well, then Funkhouser has every reason to feel like he's faced pretty much the best draw that his opponent could piece together.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Andrew can pull anything together, because as it stands, that Hammer Skull taps down the Shapers. Andrew can leave up some mana to pump up the Shipwreck Looter to trade with it, but then he's still taking a ton of damage.
Looks like we had a slight correction on our scores. Oliver 2 is the one who picked up the game win against Deanna Dang. That meaning that Smith and 2 both a game up, and Donald Smith would love to be able to just help his team out here and pick up a quick and easy win. Attacks in, there is a flash creature there to enable a block. Still can't block the Sky Terror, and there's, that Sure Strike. They're so good. Every single time they essentially represent a removal spell, all it takes is for your opponent to block, and chances are +3 power and first strike going to be good enough.
Yeah, I like this. Andrew's trying to race. He didn't have too many other options, but Donald having that combat trick made it a lot worse for them. That knocked Andrew's life total in half.
Territorial Hammer Skull, if you weren't sure before this weekend, it's one of the big signals that white is going to be where you want to be. Andrew Funkhouser here just desperately figuring out what he's going to do here. Lots of mana plus the Shapers of Nature means that even before he worries about what is in his hand, he's got some options. Looks like there might be a Jade Guardian pushing to enter the battlefield this turn.
And that's one of the things with the Merfolk deck. It's very hard for them to come back when they're behind. They don't have very much true removal. They have bounce and ways to bolster their creatures to try to race. But when you're this far behind, as Andrew is versus Donald Smith here, even a run aground just doesn't look appealing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the sources of, card advantage that it can get going is Deep-Root Waters. Whenever you play a Merfolk spell, you get a 1/1 hexproof Merfolk. That means that sometimes if you're behind, you can kind of build a board that might get you out of trouble. But on your best draws, where you're trying to just win the game through tempo, taking a turn off to cast Deep-Root Waters can feel a little bit like you're not doing the right thing. So it's a bit tricky to piece that all together.
Yeah, I really like this play from Andrew. He knows he has to race. The Jade Guardian cannot be tapped down by the Territorial Hammer Skull, so he does at least get some good blocks here, or rather, get to block in
Yeah,
the
I
first
mean,
place.
it's not a good block because it's not a winning block against any of the creatures on the other side of the battlefield, but any block's a good block right now.
Right. So on the face of it, Andrew is going to be taking 4 damage here. I think Donald might have drawn another Sure Strike.
He
and could
has
have gone
in fact
for the
drawn
kill.
another Sure Strike. I'd have been pretty tempted to go for it here. I recognize that I'm a slightly more aggressive player than is sometimes to my benefit. This way round certainly safer, getting the Pterodon Knight down. It means that there was less potential for something untoward to happen to mean that he lost this game.
Wow, no, I think this is riskier for Donald now, because if Andrew draws like a bounce spell or has a bounce spell, then he just gets to pump his creatures and attack for 7 next turn.
All right.
If he finds a bounce or removal spell here, he's going to take this game.
Removes a counter. That's still a lethal.
Did he find it? He found the runner ground for Xaxes.
Oh, that's going to sting.
Wow, so Donald could have gone for the win. Opted to play. I don't even know if it was safer, though.
It's a really tough one to figure out what the correct way round of doing that was.
Right.
You know, where your percentages lie. This is the reason that I tend to go for it.
Yeah,
Force
yeah.
them to have it.
So you're thinking in blue-green, what can they have? Blue-green, 2 mana, Pounce, Perilous Voyage. I think those are the 2 cards that come to mind. And I think at that point, Andrew would have probably used one of them by now.
Yep.
So Donald maybe should have gone for it there and got
the
punished.
fact that there were 2 draws for Funkhouser ended up being really important there. The extra counter that he could remove and still have lethal, a very big deal. But we're going to get a chance to see a bit of Oliver 2 against Deanna Dang, 2 picking up the first game. Again, more territorial Hammer Skulls. What do you think the number of unplayed Hammer Skulls anywhere in this room is?
Oh, gotta less than. No, I don't think there are any. I'm just gonna say none. There are none.
Yeah, it strikes me as incredibly unlikely that anyone's not playing white. And if you're playing white, then this one just always gets it done.
Deanna putting down the beats here. Too many times have we seen a 2-drop Territory Hammer Skull, Bonded Horncrest, and it's just running Oliver over.
Now, in the graveyard for Oliver, it looks like there's already a Settler Wreckage, though one wonders quite what happened there. 2 with a deck that's got some pretty ambitious mana going on, but everything kind of being held together here.
Yeah, it looks like he binned that with the Explorer.
Walk the plank there, dealing with the Hammer Skull. I like that.
Oliver is in major trouble, though. 5-3 trample, 5-5, and a 3-3. Like, he does have a 3-6 Ixali's Diviner, but I mean, there's just so much pressure going on right now. It doesn't. Oh, well.
Well, that will do it. If you're looking for a way of making sure that your opponent can't block especially effectively, then yes, Warrior Poet's very much the way that you should be going. Whiteley Warrior Poet, a few different abilities on there, but the important one there, you can remove X loyalty, in this case 3 being plenty, to deal X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. The creatures dealt damage can't block this turn.
Yeah.
So sometimes your Planeswalker tells a little verse around being unable to block.
That was. I mean, I don't think Deanna could draw it up any better.
Well, if the team of Funkhouser, Dang, and Craddock get out of this one, then they've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves, because I don't know if Funkhouser will even know until maybe after the match.
Right.
Quite how close he was to being dead on his game 2 there. Will Craddock picking up the win against Noah Walker. Deanna Dang squaring things against Oliver 2. There's everything to play for as we go to the latter stages of this round 5 for these 2 undefeated teams.
Let's playing to your outs. I mean, Andrew, we saw in the previous game, he went for it correctly, and he found one of the, I would imagine, few spells he could, because a Pounce wouldn't do it, a Savage Stomp wouldn't do it. Donald would be able to Sure Strike in response to 2-for-1 himself, but still survive and then kill on the following attack, so pretty crazy.
Worth noting, of course, that this set has been out for all of, what, at this point, 36 hours? 38 hours.
Officially, anyways.
At least in the US, obviously, if you're joining us from Europe, it's a little bit longer, but we're still counting it in hours and days rather than weeks and months. So everyone's still kind of getting a feel for knowing what to play around and where. We will see how these players adapt to the format gradually as it gets more familiar. Tillinali's Knight coming on turn 2 from Donald Smith, and if there's any kind of a dinosaur, he gets in for 3. As things stand, though, just 2 damage for Funkhouser. Let's see what the follow-up is for Donald Smith. Just passes things back.
It looks like he has a bunch of interactive spells, not necessarily creatures, though. And so that's great for Andrew. He gets to not take too much damage, which, as we saw before, really problematic for the Merfolk deck.
Yeah, Water Trap Weaver keeping the Tillinali's Knight tapped down. Pterodon Knight joining Donald Smith's side of the battlefield. The one piece of the puzzle he's missing is a dino to give all of his knights just a little bit of extra juice. So Funkhouser again with a comparatively slow start, not getting these 2-drops on the board. Conveniently, at least in this game, not being punished too hard for it, but he's going to have to get something going here if he wants to win this race.
Yeah, it looks like he has quite a few tricks in his hand. I think I saw the River Herald's Boon in addition to maybe even a run-aground, so has options. All right. Tishana's Wayfinder, a pretty good one here on turn 3. He would have really liked to hit that Explorer trigger, making it a 3/3 to trade with either of those creatures, but I mean, again, if Donald doesn't have a dino here, how about that one, though?
I mean, if you're looking for a dino, this is the one that you're looking for. I can't imagine it's a very good at hiding dinosaur because it's big, it's loud, it tramples, it has haste. It is the Charging Monstrosaur, getting everything going for Donald Smith. Big swings in. Andrew Funkhouser taking a whole boatload of damage there, and now he needs to find a way of dealing with that dino really quite quickly. Bouncing it, not great, because it can just come down with haste again. Yeah, this could be a problematic game 3 for Andrew Funkhouser.
The only upside for Andrew was that he was able to trade a 2/2 for the Tillinali's Knight, which is ideal, of course. But again, where he's in that position where he's so far behind, he has a grip full of cards, but it's going to be hard for him, especially as the Merfolk deck, to come back.
Charging Monstrosaur, I'm going to call it now. It's essentially a do not pass in draft. In pack 1, easy. Even in pack 2 or 3, it's so easy to splash. Even if you're not in red, it's definitely a question mark.
Yeah, treasures definitely make splashing more of a thing for sure.
So Andrew Funkhouser here, lots of cards in hand, but lots of problems on the other side of the battlefield for him.
Yeah, if he had one more mana, he'd be able to run aground the Charging Monstrosaur in combat and potentially ambush the Pterodon Knight by using the River Herald's Boon on his Tishana's Wayfinder, but that's under the assumption that, 1, Donald doesn't have another dinosaur, 2, he doesn't have a combat trick, which we know he has at least multiple sure strikes, and 3, again, he's missing 1 mana, so.
Yeah, lots of fiddly decisions here. Question from the chat, Kenji. Monstrosaur better than Regisaur Alpha?
No.
No. It's really good, though. It is really good, and as an uncommon, in principle at least, you should see it quite a bit more often. A little bit easier to cast in this red-white deck at least. But no, as it turns out, just putting even more power on the battlefield with a Regisaur Alpha, a big deal. Though not something we've seen in the featured match area quite so much.
Yeah, and it looks like Donald does have a sure strike in his hand, so Andrew's going to probably go for a double block here, use the River Herald's Boon after blockers are ordered, and then sure strike is going to, well, do its sure job. Oh, and Nixlon's binding too, and that's just going to run him over.
Yeah, this will mean that one less blocker for Andrew Funkhouser. On top of that means that if he had more copies, he would not be able to play them anytime soon.
He could have a dive down here. The Ixalan's binding doesn't look like it has completely resolved yet.
I do like dive down. 1 blue mana to give +3 toughness and hexproof.
Or this could be a pounce. No, pounce doesn't work there. Not on the 2/3 anyway, or 2/4 anyways. Oh, that's not gonna feel good. So what he's trying to do here is add the damage to the Monstrosaur so that when Donald attacks, it'll be effectively offering a trade, but we know that Donald has the sure strike in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, like, in principle, there could be some other things going on that he had another copy in hand that he knew he wanted to play next turn. Like, there's reasons to do this, but I don't think it's going to work out for Andrew Funkhouser quite as he might hope.
Yeah, actually, this will just be lethal. It'll be 8 damage. The Monstrosaur will trample over for 5. The Pterodon Knight gets in for the 3.
Yeah, because it's already taken some of that damage. No, it would trample over for 4, right? This is a 3-3 that it's...
Right, the Shauna's Wayfinder is a 3-3.
Yes.
And so the Charging Monster Sword will be an 8-5.
Oh, with the Short Strike, yes,
right.
Sorry. Andrew Funkhouser there. You can see a little shake of the leg.
This is our time walk match.
Yeah, we've sped things up just a little bit. Time has been called in our round now, so we're just closing out the end of this round here.
And that should have been... Oh, so I guess there was a discrepancy in life total. He was actually at 10 life.
I see, okay.
Okay, so that makes more sense now.
Still, the life total is 20-2.
Facing down a 3-3 flyer and a 5-5 trampler.
Yeah, Kenji, this does not look good for Andrew Funkhouser. He has, by the looks of things, got a little bit of help coming on. Will Craddock, he's already finished his match against Noah Walker, picked up the W there, and either he or Deanna Dang just providing extra opinions on how this game should be played out. One of the nice things, of course, about team play, you can get a little bit of help from your teammates if you so choose. Water Trap Weaver, and then another fight card.
Buys him some time at the cost of a 2-for-1.
And Tishani's Wayfinder again coming down. This time finding a land, not really what you want. Puts the Charging Monster on top. It's just an unending series of lethal threats coming from Donald Smith's deck. It's a race to see which one of them gets to end the game.
All right, that gains 2 life, but not going to do the trick as Charging Monster Sword once again.
All right, we are rapidly closing things out here. We actually get to see the very end of that game, relatively straightforward there. Ultimately, things going, I believe, in the way of Deanna Dang there. So she did pick up the win in spite of Andrew Funkhouser not being able to quite make it. Funkhouser getting a little graceful reprieve in game 2 against Donald Smith, but ultimately, either way round, it not mattering as his team was able to get there. That is the end of our round 5, though. We will be back with you very shortly with round 6 after these messages.